Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions, where clearly the champion this week has been the budget, where the finance minister has spoken about the agriculture, farmers, produce, yields, and the kind of allotment that he has done in sense of monies for the sector as well. Well, it was on the expected lines when the finance minister spoke about this, because the markets were readying themselves for it. The farmers have been quite distressed. Last all of year, we have seen farmers protesting because of the lower realizations on their produce. The prices were trading well below MSP, and the debts has been yet another thing that this sector has been looking at. Well, we will analyze the budget in a greater detail. Joining us on the show for that is Mr. Atul Chaturvedi, who is President, Solvent Extractor Association. He also is Head of Agri-Business in Adani. Atul, hi, thank you so much for joining us. What is your sense, first of all, what is your first reaction to that? Of course, we did see headlines come out of the budget in sense of agriculture, but what is the kind of impact that we are expecting and the realization really?
In fact, as far as the pronouncements go, they're absolutely spot on, because it doesn't make sense that we talk in terms of 7 to 8% GDP growth for the country and agriculture languishing at about 2%. So it's high time somebody really caught the bull by the horns. And this budget probably has done that. But the proof of the pudding is in eating it. Let's see what the execution is, because the key to the success of all these issues which have been raised is the execution. This time round in the budget, they talked a lot about MSP. I was just analyzing MSP. MSP as of today is available on 23 commodities plus sugar. So it doesn't make sense to have 23 commodities in MSP. A lot of those commodities nobody bothers. So probably it's high time the government evolved a system whereby they kept reviewing the necessity or otherwise of MSP on certain commodities. To my mind, commodities could also act as a disincentive. If a particular crop the government doesn't want or the country doesn't want, you could disincentivize it. The farmers need not be producing that.
Are you saying that the Essential Commodities Act itself perhaps needs some changing?
No, I'm not saying it needs changing. I'm saying that the Essential Commodities Act needs to be buried so deep in the ground that it doesn't resurface again. It's rather funny that we are still living in the socialist era of the 60s. Now the country is producing more than 275 million tons of grains and more than 300 million tons, that's the finance minister said yesterday. So why are we still having laws which empower the inspectors or the food inspectors to such an extent they can make life miserable for serious players?
So, you know, just coming back to the MSP part again, the price differential scheme or Bhavantar scheme as we call it, is that going to make a lot of difference then, or is it good on paper but impact-wise isn't really there?
No, first and foremost, if you identify certain crops which you are going to be focusing on, then to my mind, Bhavantar is the way forward, because that's the way it's done worldwide.
Sure.
Nobody goes around buying all the commodities. If the government were to buy all the 23 commodities on which MSP is applicable as of today, then possibly all the godowns in the country might get full. And our own record of good housekeeping as far as stocks go is not all that great. So possibly the way forward is not to keep procuring everything under the sun, but now with Aadhaar and with all those digital interventions, you can jolly well pay the difference to the farmers. So Bhavantar scheme has been implemented in Madhya Pradesh, and that can actually become the beacon for the country. The only thing is, whatever mistakes may have been done, they need to be corrected, and this time round when it is implemented, all those aberrations should be set right. So I think that's the way forward.
Sure. I want to come to the technology part of it, because ENAM, while it was launched in 2016, has a lot desiring for itself. We haven't seen it come the way it should have, the way it was put out. The other thing that the finance minister mentioned was that the futures and the options for commodity markets should be used properly for agriculture. So when we talk about technology, whether it's in sense of ENAM or futures and options, where do we stand and what is the way forward?
I don't want to comment on ENAM, but I certainly would like to comment on APMC. APMC has been a millstone round the neck of proper marketing of agri-produce. Why should we tell the farmer, you will necessarily have to bring your produce to the market yard and then from there it gets distributed? The days when the fear was that the traders would dupe the farmers, I think that's all gone, because the farmers are much more intelligent than the traders we put together. So they cannot be duped. And why should we shackle them? They can jolly well sell to whomsoever they want. It doesn't make sense, because if you increase the supply chain, you're creating more inefficiencies in that. In fact, long years back, CII had actually done a study where they called it the 111 syndrome. One was the money which the farmer gets, and 4 is what the consumer pays. So which means the in between
efficiency
is the inefficiency of the supply chain. So why do we want to saddle all those things?
But you know, that's the other thing really, because every time the prices go higher, we see the government falling over itself to ensure that the prices are controlled. And on the other side, you want to increase farmers' income. How will you look at this contradiction go with or narrow?
No, this definitely is because we want higher income for the farmers and lower prices for the consumers. So this is a disconnect, but obviously this can be managed, and this can be managed through the Bhavantar scheme. But having said that, to my mind, what is more important is that the policymakers need to sit with the private sector, who are actually the domain experts. So that would help the government formulate better policies. And I am very, very happy and enthused about one announcement which the finance minister made yesterday, was that institutionalizing the demand projections and prices. In fact, if you are able to do that properly, then these aberrations would not happen as they happened in the case of pulses, when the prices shot through the roof, and subsequently then they went the other way around and fell much below MSP. So all these things happened because our future projections weren't all that strong. And obviously people who are actually trading, if you can consult them and formalize that consultation, not necessarily in private, but formalize it, I think that should go a long way in helping take decisions timely.
As we move forward from here, very quickly, what is that one big opportunity and a challenge that you see in front of government until the next budget perhaps?
The government will have to possibly look at short-term and long-term measures.
Sure.
And the short-term measures can only be price-related. So it's important that you keep re-looking at your import duties in terms of edible oil, which we are much more close on. The government has been very, very proactive. In fact, if the government had not taken the price increases in the August and November, I'm sure they would have had a very tough time managing the groundnut and soya bean, because they were all selling 25–30% below MSP. So again, it boils down to taking timely action, and it was good that the government listened to the stakeholders, and we were given a solid hearing, and the action was also taken immediately. So this is something which needs to be institutionalized and formalized. So this will possibly help the government, which means we will have to relook at commodities on which duties need a relook. so that your dependence on imports come off. So that is a work in process.
So short-term, long-term, institutionalizing it, formalizing it, and of course moving in the right direction, which the government perhaps has started. Mr. Chaturvedi, thank you so much for joining us, analyzing and giving us your sense on what you think about the budget and the road forward. Well, with that, we'll go for a very short break. When we come back, we will have yet another expert who will tell you on what the budget really means for the farm as a sector.